wait. And baby, I'm TFC till I die.
Welcome, guys. Just like when TFC goes a man down and the pod reaches into the academy and pulls a homegrown player to make a senior team debut. Welcome to the Toronto Till I Die Weekly. Yes, I am your new host, Mike Newell. I'm honored to be joining the pod on a full-time basis. But fear not, guys. Unlike TFC, we're not going all academy kids in the 11. The vets, Mike Singh and Jeffrey P. Nesker, are still in the saddle with me. Gents, how you doing on this absolutely stunning Monday afternoon in Ontario?
Marquee signing, Mike. Marquee signing. Thank you, obviously, for taking the time. Yeah, DP money. We didn't know we could afford you for a little bit there, but I'm happy that you brought your asking price down a little bit and we were able to work something out. But all jokes aside, man, so delighted to have you join our show. I'm sure everyone who kind of listens to this show now also listens to the Tunnel Club, where you do a fantastic job with Sean. So I'm happy, man. I'm happy to have you here.
Guys, I just realized why I was only hearing a left channel out of both of you when we were testing, and that was because my headphones are only hearing a left channel. So if you give me 1 second to just reconnect. Actually, you know what? I'll just suffer through it. Doesn't make a difference. Because I don't want to get in the way of the celebration. I mean, we've had Mike as a guest host before, so he's obviously not doing this cold, and he absolutely smashed it when we had him there. So we're happy to have you, man, and keeping it in the family, keeping it in the fledgling TFC or Toronto Till I Die network. And I'm just looking at the comments here. This is the new DP. Axis of Evil. I love saying that name.
I gave these guys a deal. I'm giving them the Chiellini Tam deal. Might raise up in the second year. We'll see. There's sneaky stuff in the MLS contracts that always pop up.
Absolutely. As long as you wear sleeves all the time, no sleeveless shirts, I am a happy pappy. So we can go from there.
Hey, man, I might go vest one day if it's hot enough. All right, guys. Indeed. So guys, obviously, excited to be on the show. Of course, always follow us at Toronto Till I Die on Twitter. Mike mentioned the Tunnel Club. We're still going to be doing that, Sean and I. So you can follow us at a TFC Tunnel Club for post-game reaction shows, both the day of on away games and the day after at home games. But boys, let's just jump right into it. I mean, we've been off for a bit. It feels like we've been kind of in this weird quagmire of international football / not playing international football. We will get to that maybe a little bit later. But let's talk a little bit about the current state of TFC going into this weekend's matchup in Harrison, New Jersey against the Red Bulls. Look, we're unbeaten in 4, including a cup win. Yay. I don't know how you guys are feeling right now. I'm kind of getting this sense in hashtag TFC Live Land that people are kind of excited. They're not sure how to feel about this right now because it's a cup win. But at the same time, it's, it's like 4 unbeaten, but really it's kind of just 2 in the league and 2 in the cup. So how are you guys feeling? Should fans be excited about kind of how the team's playing over the last couple of weeks?
Mike? Two ugly cup wins, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like HFX and Forge, those are both games where I thought the Canadian Premier League side probably outplayed TFC, and all was said and done. But with that being said, I think fans should be excited. I think there is a lot more to come for this team in terms of they're getting healthy again, which I think we often overlook. Like, this team really got hit hard by the injury bug, by COVID bugs, just whatever it was, just at the wrong time. It seemed like everything kind of fell in at once. And sure, they were riding a 4-game unbeaten run heading into the break here, but I feel like this break was sort of much needed to get some important pieces rest and recovery, because as I mentioned, yeah, they definitely they're definitely faltering there.
Yep.
But there is reason for excitement, because obviously Lorenzo Insigne's arrival is now 2.5 weeks away. And when you look at the playoff standings, you look at the table, TFC are 3 points out of a playoff spot. I'm sure they're third last, but I feel like TFC would have taken this at the start of the season, this positioning heading into sort of
100%.
Insigne's arrival. And now it's not only going to be Insigne, it's going to be Insigne plus 3 other players is what we're hearing here. So there is reason for excitement. Summer's around the corner. I think BMO Field crowds have been pretty lively. Like I think TFC have like the 7th best attendance rating in all of MLS, despite the struggles in the first half. I mean, you go to TFC games and you know how they announce the names before the game, where the commentator says the first name and then lets the crowd say the last name. Like nobody was able to say any names in the first half of this season because they didn't know who the heck
Can I have a quick story about that? So obviously, for a lot of people know that I'm in the South End, a part of Kingston North, and the first game against, oddly enough, the Red Bulls, the home opener. Like I was stumbling over names, right? Because you're so used to saying certain names as they come out, and you're like left back, and they're like Luca. Oh, right, it's Luca Petrasco. Like,
that guy.
You almost have to like take a quick stop and like, okay, who? Oh, right, Lucas McNaughton. All right, sweet, awesome, right? And then by that time, it's over. The buzz is done. The buzz is done.
No, it's definitely taken a lot of people a couple reps. Like you obviously still hear the when Michael Bradley, like you hear Michael, and the whole stadium goes Bradley.
Yeah.
Ozo, same thing. Pozuelo gets that as well. But other than that, it's just been all sort of new faces kind of in the 11. And I just thought that that's pretty funny whenever you go to games. It's kind of a little cringe, to be honest with you, that they still kind of do it despite, no one really knowing the names. But I guess people will learn.
How are they going to get to know the names, Mike? It's a chicken or egg situation. Yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, moving into the second half of the season, I think we'll start to see some more memorable names kind of come in. And we'll see kind of how this goes, but there is reason for excitement, I do believe.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in many respects. One, the weather's getting nicer, so everyone's excited to get back out there and see the team. And two, this is the TFC that we were promised in the off season, right? This is the big signings arriving. We were kind of in like a sort of stopgap limbo for the first half of the season, and now it's time to see this team takes shape. Certainly, positionally, things are going to get decided, right? Like every kid in the academy did not want that left winger spot because they knew in 2.5 weeks from now that someone else was coming to take it away from them. So we're going to start seeing, I think, a more defined shape. Maybe on the left side, more defined responsibilities in terms of starters and in terms of who's maybe coming in as an impact sub and that sort of thing. But yeah, there's reason to be excited. I mean, as Axis of Evil says in the chat, a win is a win, especially in cup games. And you say what you will about this being 2 years late. Say what you will about it not giving up a berth, not really having an impact in terms of berths in the Champions League and stuff like that. It's still the club turning a corner. And like Mike said, they did have to fight back. They did have to claw their way into these games. And it could have been much, much worse. We could have lost both of those games, and then we'd be sitting here today lamenting the state of the club, and what shape they're in as the big summer signings arrive. But we're not. So, we are.
What was Ali Curtis's like one of his best lines? It's a results-oriented league. At the end of the day, if you're picking up the results, then we're going to be sitting here maybe a little bit happier than if you're not.
Yep.
But that needle has shifted. You mentioned, as Axis of Evil says, a win's a win, especially in cup games. Bob Bradley was saying the same thing. I remember looking at last year, even. I remember looking at TFC going up against Canadian Premier League teams, and I'm like, this should be 4 or 5-0 each time they play. And I don't know if that's a credit to where Canadian Premier League teams are going or more of a detriment to where Toronto FC was at this point of the season.
I think it can be both.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think it's both,
Yeah.
right? Like I think you do have this influx of players, especially on Forge, and you're looking at HFX Wanderers as well, who have played in the league for a couple of years now and have played together. So they've been able to grow their game and they've had the same manager since the beginning of the league. So in a lot of ways, they've grown into what they expect from their managers, both from Stephen Hart and Bobby Smirniotis, obviously.
Absolutely.
With TFC, yeah, I mean, look, most people also know I do work for Forge. So like, talking to people at Forge, it's kind of like, that was the opportunity, right? That was the golden egg. You had a chance, a team that did not have a Lorenzo Insigne, struggling to find its way under Bob Bradley, at least at the beginning half of this season. That was an opportunity to win a cup. Now, of course, glorified friendly or whatever you want to call it, I don't really subscribe to that, because a cup is a cup, a win's a win, and that you could see how TFC players were celebrating that cup. That wasn't a meaningless cup, the way that they celebrated that. So, from that perspective, I think that was the opportunity for CPL teams. But at the same time, you had a lot of young players in Hamilton in front of a big crowd, be able to hang in a game where they could have been down 3-1, right? Realistically, maybe even in the first half. I know you guys talked about it last week, but I think that is a way to sort of, I mean, if you want to go into it a little bit further, Mike, we can, but I mean, realistically, right, that team was outplayed vastly in the first half.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to say that whereas TFC were coming in maybe looking for a morale boost, so was Forge. Their standings in the CPL season are leaving a little bit to be desired. They're kind of getting seen out by some of the newer, fresher faces on the block, like the Atletico Ottawas and the Rise of Pacific. So both teams were looking for that push in terms of morale, in terms of a cup win to put in the cabinet and maybe have a knock-on effect on what goes later. And that bodes for HFX as well. I mean, they lost their starting number 10 relatively early in the season, and they've been sort of floundering since then. So that would have been a morale boost for them. Like Mike Newell says, there's no such thing as a glorified friendly. This was important to everybody. And I'd much, speaking from the position of the TFC here, I would much rather be talking to you off the back of these 2 wins and off the back of 2 losses, because then people will be ringing alarm bells like nobody's business. Right now, I don't know if you guys saw the news, but NYC FC just lost their manager to Standard Liège. So there's a lot of shaking up going on in MLS. This league that TFC plays in coming out of this pandemic has really gone in a lot of myriad different directions. Like, they kind of had a roadmap before COVID hit, where it was going to be about young money and all this other stuff. But now the realities of the world global soccer marketplace, I noticed you tweeted about this morning, Mike Newell. The realities of the global soccer marketplace are different. Serie A is almost bankrupt. So, a lot of players from Serie A are moving en masse to MLS and other leagues in so on and so forth, non-traditional markets, simply to get that bag. And for all of its strengths, MLS has never been able to look a gift horse in the mouth. So they see this, this presumed opportunity over there, and they're gonna go running screaming for it. So the league is in flux almost as much as we are. There's never a great time to do a rebuild to the level that TFC has done recently. But we might be getting pretty lucky right now, considering what's going on with the rest of around MLS. You know what I mean? At least in terms of timing. Yeah.
It is.
Exactly. We talked about the 3-point gap there, and just 2 more points I want to make on the Canadian Championship quickly. I think that's TFC's first trophy since 2018.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's important. Like,
super important
to get that, because you're looking at we're talking about young players. And I'm even talking about the Iowa Canolas, the Jaden Nelsons, the guys who've been here for a few years. This is their first trophy.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they finally got to taste what it means. And sure, you can put an asterisk beside it a little bit, but they definitely celebrated it like it was a real trophy. So
of course,
it was important for them to kind of get that over the mark, and important for the club to I guess, get that over the mark. So Yeah, like maybe this is the spark that this team needed after going through a little bit of a dull stretch. And then you have the break here to kind of just hit the reset button a little bit. Now we're really on the edge of our seat waiting for Lorenzo Insigne. So kind of wrap up, I guess, the whole question overall, Mike, is how could there not be a little bit of excitement right now when you talk about Toronto FC?
No, absolutely. And I think that just the idea of trying to figure out where all these new signings are going to fit into the 11 alone will be exciting enough. Until then you actually see Lorenzo Insigne come on the pitch. We have a question about that a little later on in the show. So I'm going to save the point until a little bit later. I'll move on here to sort of the second point I wanted to bring up in terms of this match. It is the endless debate about goalkeeping with this team. It's been talked about to death on this show, on the Tunnel Club, on various shows. But going into this weekend, there is a question on who is going to start in goal between Quentin Westberg and Alex Bono. And you know, is this a situation where you just ride the hot hand, like kind of like hockey, right? You ride the hot hand until it's not hot and you can put Bono back in? Or is it a situation where, you know, you've given Alex Bono this many starts to start the season and you don't want him to just basically lose his job for essentially nothing? Like, he hasn't really cost the team points this year. So, you know, for you gentlemen and for the audience, who do you have in net this coming Saturday?
It's a no-brainer. It's Quentin Westberg. He's unbeaten in his last. He's not even unbeaten. He's won.
Unbeaten in 2022.
He's won
according to Graham Reed.
He's won all 3 games that he's played so far. Don't change, I guess, the hot hand, as you said, Mike. But another reason is because we know who they're playing. They're playing the Red Bulls. Yep. And Red Bulls are a team, as we all know, they press. And one way to beat that press really easily is by Quentin Westberg paying a diagonal ball over the top to his fullbacks. And just his precision with that, I think, is just so key. Especially, if you guys don't know, Red Bulls concede possession every game that they play.
Oh my God!
It'll be, you'll see TFC with over 60% possession. So just having that outlet when you're being pressured, just having Q back there as opposed to Bono, I think that makes the world of a difference against a team like this. Plus the fact that he's unbeaten in 3, I think it's a no-brainer that Q goes back in goal.
I agree with you. And it's funny because in an ideal world, that's how I think you should choose who starts. Right? It should be game plan, especially when you're in a position where you have 2 goalkeepers that have such pronounced differences in their ideal skill set and how they like to play. All other things being equal, that to me seems the most logical methodology, right? Who are we playing? Can we use a guy that has better distribution or a better shot stopper? But of course, you know, this debate rages on because it's not all things being equal, and it isn't as simple as that. And you know, anytime you're benching somebody that's making that much money in a salary cap league, there's going to be questions, right? And you know, we've talked about this until it's blue in the face, until all 3 of us were blue in the face. So I'm not gonna beat a dead horse, but I agree with Mike. I think it's Q's job to lose this weekend. You know, if I had answered first, I would have said, who cares? We're going to Harrison. It's the Red Bulls. We're probably going to lose anyway. So, you know, put number 3 in there. But yeah, no, I'm prepared to agree with the Westberg shouts. How about you, Mike Newell?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does have to be Q. I think he's earned the right to keep the shirt for now. That said, we have not seen the last of Alex Bono. He will play again. He will get a run of starts again. I'm pretty sure of it.
Any more cup matches left?
Yeah, no, I'm serious. I think they will start him in league matches again. I think
they have to.
I think to be perfectly honest, I think the club view him a lot differently than we view him. I think they really do view him as a number 1 goalkeeper. But you know, from that perspective, right now Q has done nothing to say that he shouldn't get the start again on Saturday. So I do think it will be Q, but right. I do not be surprised if Alex Bono gets back into goal this season.
Nothing surprises me about that situation.
I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but I don't think the club views either of these guys as number 1 goalkeepers. And both of these guys, their contracts are up at the end of the season. So yeah, take that for what you will. I can't see them bringing either of these guys back, especially at the price that Alex Bono makes. Character-wise, these guys are the best people out there. Like, you want these types of people in your room, but at the end of the day, you got to consider the price tag and you got to consider the quality. I don't think both of their long-term futures are going to be in Toronto.
Fair enough. All right, we've talked the goalkeeping stuff to death, so we have to bring it up though because it seems
of course we do.
But next up is another topic that seems to never go away is Alejandro Pozuelo, and more importantly, are we starting to see the glimpses of MVP Alejandro Pozuelo starting to come back? I know that. Thanks, Rob. How you doing? We're starting to see him play a lot better. I think at the beginning of the year there was some concerns. We voiced on the Tunnel Club. I know you guys have voiced it as well in terms of how he was playing. But the last couple of games, he has definitely stepped up his game and looks fit. Like he looks like proper again. So are we starting to see the return of MVP Pozuelo, or is this maybe just a mirage?
We've talked about this on our show before, and I believe I've always been in the corner where I'm a Paz fan, man. I think the guy is so much quality. I think you can tell he's head over heels better than really anyone on the pitch, in my opinion. Just based off some of his touches and his ability to keep ball in tight areas. TFC don't have a player like Pozuelo. Agreed. They don't. The closest thing is Jonathan Osorio, and I'll still say that Paz is better than at Ozo at that part of the game specifically. And then when it comes to creating chances, there's no one better than Paz on this team. There's not many players better in the league, and in my opinion, than Alejandro Pozuelo. I thought this season overall, he's looked so much better than he did a year ago. Again, the bar was really low.
Yeah,
he set out to really bounce back in 2022 in a contract year. And I think, in my opinion, he's first half of the season, when you consider who he's playing with, what he's being asked to do, I think he's done that. You see him trying to adapt his game a lot under Bob Bradley. Bob Bradley's been on him, asking him to contribute more off the ball defensively. The reason being is Bob Bradley doesn't like playing as a number 10 or playing with a number 10. And Pozuelo adamantly has always voiced his desire to play as a number 10. So that's honestly where the disconnect, I think, is for me, where Pozuelo's being asked to do a lot of different things, and he's being asked to change positions quite a bit. You look at even the Canadian Championship game, he was asked to drop back and play beside Michael Bradley as an 8. I don't think we've seen that yet out of Pozuelo in his whole tenure here. He's been asked to play on the right wing. So we can debate about whether or not he's a Bob Bradley type of player moving forward. But I think overall, I'm excited to see what he does in the second half of the season, because he'll have more leeway and more people to play with up top to kind of help him out a bit.
So, Jeff, I'm going to add something before you just jump in, because I'd love to get both your thoughts on this as well.
Sure.
You can go first. Is the positional side of things, because I've said that Pozuelo doesn't really, I'm not sure where he fits in a Bob Bradley system.
I agree with you.
But is that a Pozuelo problem, or is that a Bob Bradley issue? And Jeff, I'll let you go.
I mean, we hired Bob Bradley and we gave him the keys to the car. So there's no question here. I mean, is Pozuelo one of 5 players available in the whole of world football? Absolutely not. Do I disagree with anything that Mike Singh is saying? Absolutely not. But we've made our deal with our sporting director Gaffer. We've got to give him the ability to play the side that he wants. And then that's compounded by the fact that you only get 3 DPs. And one of them is a guy that's not good for the system. So, the last time we did this, Mike Singh, I got to have nicknames for you guys, because Mike is just getting, I mean, it's only been 23 minutes and I'm losing my mind. But, this is make or break for Paz, right? His one get out of jail free card is chemistry with Lorenzo Insigne, right? That'll paper over a lot of the other cracks, because if the two of them form an instant chemistry, then it becomes a Bob issue, because it's like, okay, in your ideal world, this is the system you wanted to play. Well, the world isn't an ideal place, and now we've got something that's clicking. So are you going to adapt to it? But if they don't, he's gone. I mean, why should we expect our brand new coach, sporting director, to have to play square peg round hole? That's not fair. That's not fair to him, and it's not fair to the club. Paz has had his chance. It's, independent of Lorenzo Insigne and these new arrivals, it's not working out. He's all over the field. And when it does work out, it's because he's falling into, I don't want to say bad habits because it's goals or chance creation, but it's not the right habits for the game we want to play. And so, unless we can't sign anybody else and it's pause or academy players or SoccerBot S5000, which of course it isn't, then it's a done deal. It's a no-brainer, right? Like this whole bird in the hand worth two in the bush is not the system that we should be abiding by.
Nesker analogies, love it. Bing.
Yeah, you got your first one.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, no, I don't like using the word problem there because
yeah, that might be too strong a word. You're right.
That's
fair.
Yeah, because it's neither their fault, in my opinion. Like Bob Bradley's a new coach, and this is Paz was here before him. Paz had a fantastic an MVP caliber season in 2020. He was great in 2019 in the playoff push. Sometimes that's just the way it is. It doesn't really work out between the player and the manager. I don't think, and it's an interesting caveat because usually a head coach isn't the sporting director and head coach.
Yep.
Right. And that's like
Very
the added layer and dimension to all of this is like, if we're talking about Greg Vanney again and Ali Curtis, then there's that little bit of disconnect there, but Bob Bradley controls the roster with, of course, a little bit of help there from Bill Manning as well.
Sure.
So it's at the end of the day, it's going to be Bob Bradley's team, and whether or not that includes Alejandro Pozuelo, that's 100% in his court, totally up to him. If it happens that Pozuelo and Lorenzo Insigne get chemistry, I mean, they're doing that in a Bob Bradley system. Yep. And the team winning. The only way that I can see them really keeping pause is if the team does get results and does turn a corner here, because at the end of the day, a team is more important than the performance of an individual
player.
But
I wonder if the club becomes a little more gun shy about the idea of handing contracts to players in contract years, right? Like you kind of had the same thing with Josie, kind of had the same thing with Michael again. And look, I would argue, I'd probably argue that the Michael Bradley one has worked out a little bit better than what happened with Josie.
Sure.
Even though I'm a Josie stan, but still, I wonder if the club sort of takes a little extra step before they
would hope so.
Like, even if they do get results, right? Like even if Pozuelo is able to get into the playoffs, let's just say, right? Do you then still look at it and be like, well, okay,
here's another 5-year deal? Yeah, exactly.
Depending on what he asks for, right?
Yeah,
I think term is more important than actual money wise, unless he's getting a non-DP contract. Other than that, I think term 2-3 years is more important. But you mentioned the Josie deal. It's not like this team has hit it out of the park in their DP signings. Aside from, I'd say Pozuelo was a good DP signing. Aside from that, no one else has really hit it out of the park yet, if you include that Josie Altidore one as well. So the Josie extension, the Soteldo, Carlos Salcedo, I don't think any of them have hit it out of the Piatti, exactly. Right? So it's not like the grass is necessarily automatically going to be greener. We have to keep that in mind in terms of, we know Paz is proven here. He's done it before.
But again, and I side with Mike Newell here. If because of recent history and recency bias, I would be really disappointed if we're still giving out these grace contracts with so little afterthought. You know what I mean? And I would be okay with losing a player of the caliber of Alejandro Pozuelo if it means that my club is a bit more discerning and unwilling to give out those sort of, legacy contracts to the like of which Josie was.
Let me ask you,
like,
is there something that Paz can do that would earn him a new contract with TFC this year?
In a perfect world, be a number 8 and Bob Bradley loves him. In an imperfect world, which is the world that we live in, strike up such chemistry with Lorenzo that he's undroppable.
For me, it would be partly that, but I think also, I think there would have to be a willingness from him to be okay with switching roles, right? And he's shown that a little bit this year, but I think there has to be a willingness in his part to, you're not going to be able to float anywhere you want to go at times. And yes, we're going to probably maybe have to stick you out wide a little bit more sometimes. And yes, sometimes we're going to have to ask you to drop and defend a little bit more.
But at that point, Mike, is he still Pozuelo, right? Like, are we, is it not couldn't he be a number 10 somewhere else and do what he, you know what I mean? Like, is it worth it to him to stay?
But
right?
But guys like him are hard to find, right? It was already hard enough to find him the first time, right? Like,
but you're missing. But is it even Pozuelo if he's playing right wing or as a number 8, right? Like, we found a great 10 for the system that we needed, but if we're playing him out of position or playing him in a role that he's not comfortable with, and we're getting 60-70% of him, who's winning in this equation? We're not, he's not, and money's exchanging.
That's the other
hands,
thing,
right?
Right.
Like, it's just,
a good point,
to me,
Jeff.
at that point, you cut your losses, right?
Yeah, this will be an interesting storyline to watch the rest of the season because, as you mentioned, Jeff, I'm with you there. He does have that wild card in his back pocket, and that's kind of what he looks like alongside Lorenzo Insigne.
Yeah.
But I think right now, we all agree he's kind of fighting a losing battle here because of the system that Bob Bradley plays.
Agreed. Absolutely.
All right. Sort of one before I get into a lighthearted one here, but is this a match? So obviously we played the Red Bull before. The home opener did not go that well. It's kind of safe to say it didn't quite go the way it was scripted. Is this an opportunity to show for Bob Bradley to show that he's evolving his tactics in terms of now he's coming back and playing Red Bull for a second time? We know what to expect. We know what Red Bull football is. Is this an opportunity to sort of show some evolution in the way that he'll be lining up against Red Bull on Saturday?
That's a hell of a question. Yeah.
But I actually don't think tactics were the issue last time.
Okay.
I think when you break down the game, it was just some of those individual moments that cost TFC. One of them off the top of my head, that set piece, the swung in. Yeah, what are you going to do there?
Yeah.
Right. Other one was, I think, man marking. I think Jaquil Marshall-Rudy had a really tough game that game.
Yeah, he had a
Kamala bodied him. Yeah.
Like Lewis Morgan ended up having the hat trick. I know there was a little bit of distance on both of Lewis Morgan's first goals. And that I think he got a little bit too much space. I don't think that's tactics. I think that comes down to individual defending. And the last one was, if you guys remember, TFC had a corner. The ball gets knocked out and Jaquil goes in to kind of win a ball and gets muscled off the ball, and the guy goes in 2-1-0 on your goal. And the same part of that is Jaden Nelson on that play kind of held up and didn't sprint back. To me, it's not tactics or game plan. That just comes down to maybe the youth on the team at the time. So maybe I think it's less so an opportunity for Bob Bradley to showcase, more so it is the players to showcase that they've
love it
kind of learned.
Absolutely.
I mean, tactics and Red Bull, it's interesting because there's such, in terms of how they play, it's so stringent. And what is that if not tactics? But in terms of how you play against them, you know what I mean?
Don't turn the ball over cheaply.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of trying to hold on possession and maybe hit him on the counter a few times and try not to get completely wrecked by the 65th minute of keeping up with that, insane press. But yeah, no, I agree with Mike saying this is about the kids showing where they stand now, and I think that they're well aware of that, this opportunity to showcase just how far they've come since that home opener with respect to their own personal responsibilities, their own inexperience versus hard-won experience. Now it'll be a very interesting game to watch.
Okay, perfect. Last of this segment before we move on to a new segment on the show that I'm really excited to try out here. But just a quick one. Are we going to see a clean sheet this week? I think we should create like a little countdown, like weeks of safety on the job.
I will do it. I will absolutely make one.
Will we? Yeah. So the question is for you guys, will we see a clean sheet this week?
No, sir. No, sir. No way.
I can't say that we will. But if they do, this would be the game that doesn't make any sense whatsoever for them to do it. So why not? Why not? Yeah. I'm going to say yes. You know what?
Yeah, we're either going to
throw it out there. I'm going to see yes. Yeah. Let's go.
Yeah, positive. Yeah. All right, let's go. Yeah. All right. Yeah. I'm not as optimistic. It will not be a clean sheet again, but start the countdown clock. There you go. Yeah. All right, let's move on, guys. I've got 3 TFC #TFC Live burning questions of the week. And for the audience, I love to make this a segment where we get you involved. Like you send in some burning hot take questions. We'll ask them to the panel here. You can DM them to Toronto Till I Die on Twitter, or you can DM them to me personally at Football Saves on Twitter if you want to do that. And during the week, we will get those questions up in a quick segment here. So I've created 3.
Let's go. I love all 3 of them.
And let's see how we're doing. So the first one, which is going to be a burning hot one, I think. Obviously, we mentioned at the top of the show, Lorenzo Insigne is only a couple of weeks away. I think he's supposed to arrive in 2 weeks, I think. Like somewhere on the 24th, 25th, maybe.
Has anybody checked Zaza to see if he's here already?
End of June.
Okay. Yeah, probably end of June, around then. But here's a question I have for both the panel and for everybody out there in hashtag TFC Liveland. Is Lorenzo Insigne the right signing for TFC at this stage of the rebuild? And Mr. Nesker, I'm going to let you go first. I'll let you go.
Of course he is, because he was in a contract year with Napoli, right? And whoever was going to sign him next was signing him for a multi-year deal. So you either get him now, or you get him, how old will he be in 4 years? 8,000. So yeah, no, it was now or never for this specific player. It was now or never. And your question is very different than my answer, because your question is it the right signing for TFC at this stage of its rebuild? Absolutely not. But is he the right signing for was this the only time we even had an outside chance of signing him? 100%. So the disconnect there is going to be what we all work out as fans over the course of the next half season.
I think it was, but I'm going to say for a different reason than what Jeff is saying. Last year was arguably the worst year in Toronto FC's history.
Not arguably. It really was. Yeah,
it was, right? I got a sense there was definitely some apathy going around. You look at the crowds that were showing up at the stadium last year, it was embarrassing.
Sure.
And I know TFC took that personally. And from a commercial perspective, I think this club needed to go out and swing big.
100%.
Get fans excited again. Get fans back in the seats. So from a club, franchise, organization perspective, absolutely, it was the right time. It was needed. And I actually like the fact that he's coming in the summer, because you get the first kind of half out of the way, which was really rough playing the kids as the rebuild kind of goes on. And he kind of joins halfway through the season here to kind of reignite a little bit of that spark. As I mentioned off the top of the show, attendance numbers have been great in Toronto. And I think that's only going to get better with Lorenzo Insigne, win or lose, in my opinion. So I think absolutely, I think it just buys them more time to rebuild. So I think absolutely. And as Jeff said, anytime you kind of go out there and get a player of Insigne's quality, those are moves that are going to be tough to pass up on, especially on a free transfer.
Exactly. And there's really no perfect time for this. Do you know what I mean? In the case of a player like Insigne, the market is driven by him, not by our needs, right? And any team sort of has to take a back seat and sort of refocus their needs based upon the player's availability.
And I asked that question because I kind of see this Toronto FC season somewhat similar to the 2015 season.
Yep.
Where now obviously you had Javinko at the beginning of the year, but the plan was to bring him in the summer.
Yes, it was.
Then he bought his way out essentially to come early. But it's kind of the same thing where right now scoring goals is not a problem for Toronto FC, right? It's stopping goals.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. From an expected goals perspective, yes. The stats aren't great either. They've probably finished more chances than they probably should.
But expected goals didn't exist in 2015, so we're good. Yeah.
Sorry.
Actually, they're the best in the league at doing that in terms of expected goals. They have more goals than what their expected
supposed
goals
to be
are
getting. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
So fair enough. I like those responses. Okay. Second burning question here: defensive issues. What or who specifically is the issue, and how would you go about potentially solving this? Mr. Singh, you go first.
I think it's a collective issue, and more so based on the roster. Like, there's so much. You look at. It's going to be easy to point the finger at a guy like Carlos Salcedo, but you look at the players that are playing around him for the most part. Like, Shane O'Neill was brought in here to be the fourth center back on this team. he's been thrown into a starting role. Lucas McNaughton in his first year in MLS. Caden Chung, Pacific FC player that comes over first year in MLS. Jaquil Marcheruti adjusting to a new position. Jacob Schaffelberg adjusting to a new position. Luca Petrasso, first year in MLS. Mm-hmm. Chris Mavinga has been non-existent this year.
Yeah.
That's just the back line, right? So I think that's for me, that's the biggest issue right now with Toronto FC defensively, is the fact they don't have enough MLS ready players at this specific moment.
Yep, 100%. I can't add to that. It's exactly what Mikey Singh just said. It's a group situation. You can single out players, but that's making it too easy. That's making it too binary. It really is a team problem.
Yeah, and I find the criticism of Carlos Salcedo interesting because and a lot of it's fair. It is fair. He is on DP salary, so that does carry a different level of expectation, fair or not. Because I think the DP label, I think, is frankly ridiculous in a lot of cases, and it does put undue pressure on players that they just don't really need. But I also do think that from a center back perspective, in terms of a player who, once he can be surrounded by the right players and get consistency with a partner, I think he's actually going to be really, really good for us. And I think he's going to end up being, once they buy him down as a DP, which they're going to eventually buy him down as a DP. Maybe not this season, but eventually at some point. Mike's shaking his head. No, not at all. Am I completely off?
It'll be really challenging, but we'll see.
Fair enough. But even if they do keep him as a DP, I do think that eventually, once he gets a partner that he can be consistent beside, I actually think you can see a lot of the quality that he has, right? He tackles actually really well. And he also distributes the ball really well, right? I think it's just he's still learning who he's playing with, right? And how players like to receive a ball. That takes a lot of time, as you guys mentioned.
Sure.
Sort of at the top of this. All right, third question. And this one, Mr. S, you're going to love this one.
No, I already do.
Was, quote unquote, trading Jefferson Soteldo for Carlos Salcedo worth it? Mr.
Absolutely.
Nesker, you go first.
Absolutely. Get that guy as far away from our club as possible. Now that being said, what has Salcedo been lights out? Absolutely not. Do I anticipate seeing Salcedo bought down? Absolutely not. Do I anticipate seeing him here next year? Absolutely not. It was an unfair, in a lot of ways, it's an unfair situation for Carlos Salcedo because coming in with that DP tag, like you said, brings a whole lot of expectation. Again, in a lot of respects, a center back, that's why you hear the term bandied around so often, center back pairing, right? This is a position that quite often does require a lot of chemistry with your other half on the right or the left hand side. And so, considering the state of our other center backs and considering his DP tag, there was a lot stacked against him. The odds were very much stacked against him coming in. But was it worth getting rid of Twinkle Toes mixed up over? Absolutely. Absolutely. Without question.
Yeah, I don't disagree with Jeff. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes off the field. I think on the field, I would rather, I think I'd rather Soteldo on the pitch than Carlos Salcedo, personally. But off the field, I think it's a no-brainer. They needed to move on from Soteldo.
Yeah, I actually agree with you, Mike, in that regard. Because if you look at Soteldo's stats and his statistics, he actually did perform at a not quite a DP level, but close. From the way that he was playing. Again, you're also on it. He was playing on a team that was,
Patrick Mullins, Dom Dwyer.
Yeah.
Total of 0 goals.
No Mullins slander.
Right.
Right? Fine. 2021 Mullins slander.
Right. It's basically him and Jacob Schaffelberg essentially last season. Right. So from that perspective, I get that. But obviously the off-field problems, no. From what we've all heard, and I think we're all starting to understand what it was. No, you couldn't have kept him. But
No.
I mean, it would have been interesting, maybe. All right.
I gotta run, boys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Go for it, Mike.
Ciao.
Thanks for joining, buddy. We'll see you.
Ciao,
next
buddy.
time, yeah? All right, Mr. Nesker, you and me are closing this thing out. So let's
do it.
All right. So in closing, let's go through a couple of rapid fire things in the world of Canadian soccer. First, let's touch on the men's national team. A 4-0 win over Curacao on Thursday after not playing against Panama. We're not going to quite go into the whole, why they didn't play. I think that's been covered to death. I think you guys now have a pretty good understanding out there on TFC line why they didn't play. But they do go out and beat Curacao Nations League 4-0. I turned off the game at halftime because the thing was a foregone conclusion to me.
Yeah.
Just the way that the game was going, like they were dominating the ball, and there was just no way for Curacao to get into this game. There will be the questions around, was this worth it from a World Cup preparation perspective? But I think any game is a preparation, right?
Any game is. Yeah.
It's just, yes, it's not World Cup, world-class competition. No, of course not. You want to be playing those games, but 4-0 win, still a 4-0 win. You get a Davies hat trick and his return to the national.
Absolutely.
Or return brace, not hat trick.
Yeah, not a hat trick. They subbed him out before he could get his hat trick. But I mean, it's reps, right? But I said this. I think I said this in response to one of your tweets, if memory serves. I didn't turn it off at halftime because what was bothering me so much was just the lack of clinical finishing in the box, for the amount of chances. Yeah, there was a lot of rust, but again, there's only one more. Is this the last window before World Cup, or do we get one
no,
more?
they get another one in September, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, so rust is going to be par for the course, right? All teams are going to be rusty. If our only this is going to be a very quick trip. I'm gonna be as succinct as I possibly can. If we can't finish our chances, if we can't up the ratio of chance creation to finishing much higher than it was on display in that admittedly 4-0 victory, this is going to be a very short trip. We're not going to get those kind of opportunities against a team like Belgium, against a team even Monaco, Croatia. Our group requires us to be a lot more clinical. And like you were saying, you turned the game off at halftime because it was a foregone conclusion. I wanted to see our boys put them to the sword, and it seemed like there was a bit too much cuteness in the final third. There was players. It could all be rust, and certainly tonight I'll be watching to see if a lot of that rust dissipates. But yeah, I'm concerned. I'm concerned because we know what this Canadian men's national team is now. I think we've got a pretty good idea of what they are in terms of identity, in terms of how they like to play, in terms of their preferred style, and I want to see a way higher ratio of finishing. The US put 5 on Grenada, right? So even in these Nations League games playing against CONCACAF minnows, which again is not ideal as World Cup preparation, we're still we're not at the top of the echelon in terms of
I'm not sure about that. I mean, look, we put 4 against them, and yeah, okay, fine. Curacao, this wasn't the best Curacao squad we probably could have faced, but they created a lot of chances, right? They did, and you're right, they did not finish them all, right? Like they didn't. They had a hard time finishing. Especially at the beginning of the game until they got the penalty. And I felt after that, they kind of relaxed a little bit. And look, when they went 2-0 up, they kind of took their foot off the pedal a little bit. And that's, yes, that might be a little bit concerning. But again, I think that has more to do with the opponent and the fact that, they just realized that these guys weren't going to hurt them no matter what they did. Right. So it's that. And yes, you can maybe point to, focus and sharpness, even when with with a team that is not going to hurt you. But a 4-0 win against a minnow is expected, right? And they did what they probably were supposed to do in that game, which is go and batter them, right? And they battered them from a possession perspective, a shots perspective, chances created perspective, and obviously from a goals perspective. So I have no problem with that. I think if I do have one thing that comes out of it is just, yes, I do think you just need to keep your foot on the gas for all 90, even if you're playing Curacao and they have no chance. So it'll be interesting to see, as you mentioned tonight, they are playing Honduras at San Pedro Sula, not the intimidating fortress as it used to be. We're not talking about it as this place where like, oh God, San Pedro Sula. Now
because it's a bad habit, Mike, right? Like taking your foot off the gas, it can become muscle memory. So who's to say that, they don't do it against Belgium, because that's now muscle memory. You don't want to build these bad habits, right? Like always, play to the whistle, and you're, if you're suiting up for your national team, there are no easy minutes, right? That's an opportunity to get another goal or to test yourself in terms of this training session thing, right? It's a matter of not creating an environment where bad habits can be built.
Well, I think again, I would probably put that down to the fact that, look, if they had played Iran, let's just say it wasn't an issue. Again, you can have your point of view on whether or not that game should be scheduled or not.
Yeah. We'll avoid that entirely.
But if the game did go ahead, or it was another country that was also going to the World Cup as well as preparation, I think the mental standard of the way that they would be playing is different, right? They would.
I hope so. But because with more and more reps against, CONCACAF, where, the last 15 minutes are garbage time, it's, you can say that it's not going to influence you and you're not going to build a bad habit, but then you're playing Monaco and the last 15 minutes, you take your foot off the gas and they put 3 past you because it's the World Cup finals, right? You just don't want to introduce this symposium for that to take place. And I fear, as a consequence of this sort of lax window and the opponents that we're playing and the way that we've now sort of encapsulated them mentally, that we're very much building these bad habits. And that is a concern of mine. Right?
Well, we'll see again against Honduras. I think they will be a little bit more up for this.
I hope so.
You'll still see Honduras as a challenge, right? At least they brushed them away in qualifying, but I still think they'll see that as a challenge. And they'll go in and do the thing in San Pedro Sula. So we'll see how that goes tonight.
Oh, do I keep saying Monaco over? Morocco?
I was going to be like, we got to play Monaco. That'd be maybe we're getting out of the group.
Thanks, Graham. No, I absolutely meant. Sorry,
it is Morocco. It is Morocco, who did get pasted by the U.S. by the way in there.
Pasted. Absolutely pasted.
Pasted. Okay, so quick shout outs to TFC, the youth, the young players. We've been talking about them all season. So shout out to the following players who's made the Canada U20 squad for CONCACAF qualifying. Kobe Franklin's in there, and Hugo Mbong, Priso, if you want to, because he is the brother of Ralph Priso as well. They've made the squad. Whereas Adam Perlman and Adisa Di Rosario, another Di Rosario. They're on the training squad. So congratulations to those young men. They will be heading off to CONCACAF qualifying.
It's a great lineup, if you look at it, not a lot of unattached FC. A lot of academies bearing fruit. The Canadian Premier League bearing fruit. I'm a big fan of Mauro Bello, who's going to be coaching this team. I know people will chide me for it, but I thought he was great. He was a great fit at that L'Impact, and I've been following his career with interest as he's moved to international football. And it will be nice to see him given the full keys of the car, because I think he's a brilliant tactician. It's awesome to see the pathways forming. Especially at the U20 level, because in the same way that I was just talking 2 or 3 minutes ago about forming bad habits for the men's senior team, this is a great habit for the program in itself. Having this wider player pool to choose from, having players committed to systems that'll go right from U20 all the way up to the senior team. It all signs point to some great years ahead for the men's national team program. and a strong lineup like this with prospects like this coming from coast to coast to coast, various different professional entities is just wonderful. I mean, it's a hell of a good thing for the sport.
It's exciting. I mean, you can't say anything, but it is exciting. You know, you got a lot of those young U20 players that are also playing in Europe, playing their trade at senior level in Europe. Now they're they're starting off their careers, or they may be on reserve teams, but you know, it's important to have that mix. You have guys playing in Europe, you have guys playing in the Canadian Premier League, you have guys playing obviously in academies for MLS teams, and some are on their reserve squads in MLS Next Pro. Yep. So what you're seeing right now is again, like you said, sort of this idea that there's various pathways for these young players to fulfill their talent, right? And whether they get to Europe right away or whether they have to take a step or two to get there, this is a great springboard for them to do that. And 100%. Especially now with the men's team now qualifying for the World Cup, I think it brings more scouts' eyes to the U20 level. And
I was going to say that. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, you know, these guys could get their Richie Larea move, you know, at 21, a lot sooner than Richie did. Right.
Exactly.
And, you know, if they end up in a position such as Richie finds himself, where, you know, it's not easy to crack that first team, they've got a lot more years to develop in a training situation than our man Richie does, right? So yeah, it's all good, man. It's all good. You know, looking at that lineup filled me with an enormous sense of happiness and excitement, because it's nice to see all of these different entities kind of come together in this new soup that is, you know, the Canadian international football scene.
Absolutely. Right? And I'm a big fan of Hugo Mbong too. I think he could be the next one coming out of the academy for TFC. So look out for him. If you haven't seen TFC 2 play yet, I think he just signed a couple of weeks ago for the twos. So he should be there on a regular basis.
Which we can't go see yet. We can't go to York Lions to see them.
It's really I've got to get on the call about that, because I actually really do want to see them this year. They're actually pretty good.
And York Lions is a great stadium.
And they won this past weekend too. They I think they beat Philadelphia. They beat the Union.
I think it was Phil. Yeah, it was.
They beat the Union at home. So that was good. Yeah. Well, Jeff, this is kind of wrapping up my maiden voyage on Toronto Till I Die. How did I do? Did I mess up?
Love it. A+ is across the board. Absolutely. Awesome. You gave me plenty of opportunities to trash Jefferson Soteldo. So everything is fantastic. I mean, listen, you've got Axis of Evil giving you glowing endorsement, and he doesn't like anything. So I just gendered Axis of Evil, and that was unfortunate. So they don't like anything. So I think you're doing just great, my friend.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Is that the cue for me to get?
That is the cue. Other than to say this, we're setting up a show next week. Obviously, we'll be talking a little bit about the result in Harrison, whether it's a win, a draw, or a loss. We'll see how it goes. And then obviously you're going to also set up the table for the Tunnel Club show. Interesting fact, I'll be in Halifax this weekend.
Nice.
Because I'm going to see Forge take on the Wanderers in CPL.
Actually. Nice.
Both Sean and I will be there. Hopefully we'll find a pub to do.
Find a donair store. I want to hear.
We'll do the donair shop. Yeah, we'll do a little donair, shoving little fries in our mouth.
Man, I'm so jealous. I missed the TFC HFX. I'm gonna miss this Forge HFX maybe next year, but I got to get out to that stadium.
Honestly, it is like I'm one of those people who's like, you know, when a place is good to go watch football, it's good to go watch football, and the Wanderers grounds is a great place to go. A little ground to watch football. It's fantastic.
If they take away those shipping crate VIP places before I get a chance to be there, I'm gonna be very very upset.
Absolutely riot.
I'll have to bring my own. I'll bring like a tent and make my own shipping container out of spite. All right, cue us, and we'll take us out of here and keep people waiting for more next week.
Yeah, absolutely. So follow at Toronto Till I Die for next week's show, and for the Tunnel Club, follows at TFC Tunnel Club for start time on Twitter Spaces. But other than that, for Michael Singh, for Jeffrey P. Nesker, I'm Mike Newell. Thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody. Thanks again.
And baby, I'm TFC till I die.